In the post today, I've got a package from Cool Components, which is a UK kind of parts company, electronic parts company. And in here, I'm hoping for a couple of lithium-ion batteries, which will help me progress with the next stages of my kind of version 2 of the status light, which I'm hoping to be battery powered. So I ordered a variety of different sizes, which will allow me to kind of take a look at how they might fit within the overall structure and the shape. And so I can decide what capacity I'll be using, and this will then inform the overall design, whether I will need to make it larger or change the shape to accommodate, and as well as the layout of the internal components. I think this design is going to be a lot more difficult to kind of fit everything in. I certainly learnt a lot from the previous version. And take a look at some of these batteries and the sizings now. So I ordered a couple of different sizes of lithium-ion battery. I didn't really have any spare ones, so I thought it would be useful to have anyway, as well as the other odd additional part, I think. I can't quite remember exactly what's going to be in here. Packaging. Okay, so spare one of those because they're always useful at the moment. And I've got 4 different sizes of battery here. Got a 2000 milliamp hour. I think there's 1000 and 800 in here. That's 1000 milliamp hour. Yeah, 850, and a tiny little 110 milliamp hour battery. Certainly that's not going to be of any use for this project. So I was looking at kind of 5 to 800 milliamps being drawn, but it could be useful for something in the future, and they're relatively cheap, these. So I think the decision will come down to kind of one of these 3. Obviously the larger the capacity, the longer it's going to last. Should be the kind of key here. But in addition, I also need to make sure it's going to fit. And I could double up with these batteries. It's always going to be a possibility. And these are the other components that are going to sit inside the unit. So there's the electric imp development board and a lithium-ion charging circuit. This is a nice little kind of SparkFun board. You plug the battery pack into the board. It'll then take a USB feed in, and it will quite happily charge, and you can draw power from it whilst it's in use. So this will allow it to be run on battery power normally, and I can also then disconnect it and the thing should carry on running as expected. It also solves a problem with the USB plug placement. Last time I used the little trinket with it, and the USB port on that was the one that powered the whole system. The problem with this board here is that this card, or the end of this card, needs to be visible from the outside of the casing. But obviously so does the connector on the side. And so on its current form, it's going to be very kind of limited in where it can be mounted. Ideally, you want a square kind of case like that. And that really didn't suit the design at all. So I had the trinket kind of mounted underneath, and the connector was placed there, and you could kind of plug it in. And it worked. It was a good idea, I thought, and it kind of seemed to sit quite nicely. But to kind of configure these, you hold your mobile phone up to the edge. And so you hold the phone up to the edge of the board like that, and the flashing light, the screen kind of flashes away, and that communicates with a little kind of LDR, or kind of light dependent transistor inside, which kind of communicates the Wi-Fi config data. And if you've got a USB cable kind of coming out at that point, you can't get this flashing against the screen. So I was finding that when I wanted to program this thing, I was having to just about hold the screen there, and it was really kind of intermittent. It wasn't particularly good. And so that's one thing I need to solve for this. So ideally, I'd have used this board here and mounted the 2 like so. And so whilst that's still a possibility for this one, I may need to at least increase this kind of distance between the 2 boards, so I can then get the phone in and still have it plugged in. There's also, for these ones here, there's this cutout in the metal shielding. This is for the Wi-Fi signal to be able to get through. But it also allows a lot of light through into the casing, which does impact the system's ability to read the flashing light on the screen. and so if possible I'd like to try and accommodate some kind of plastic shielding above that to try and block out ambient light, so hopefully be part of the casing. And so in the end I'm going to need to mount these kind of components in this system somehow, and so I could end up with a method where I use the battery in between to separate things out, to sandwich between the two. That gives some spacing of the two boards. Obviously, in addition to that, I need to be able to mount this in a nice way. Previously, there was the base of the unit was recessed to hold the trinket, and that kind of sat in quite firmly and allowed the USB connector to be plugged in. It wouldn't move around. The electric inboard then sat on the top. Putting a battery in the way, it makes things a little bit messier, so I'll possibly accommodate this again at the very base of the board. I then kind of have some kind of supports around the side and around the edges to kind of securely fit this in place, so that kind of sits down nicely. Maybe some pegs for the holes. The battery could then maybe sit within the unit like so, and then possibly if that sat that way round, it would still, I could go for that kind of orientation there, where I could still have some kind of plastic mounting at this end, which this could kind of lock into quite nicely, and also somehow at this end here. So it's a little bit more complicated with this one, and that's what I'm going to have to play around with. I'll start, I think this will still fit within the same shape, which is nice. So I think it's time to kind of move over to the computer and have a play around with some designs and see if I can get this functioning. I mean, this is the 1000 mAh battery, so this would give me an hour to 2 hours roughly of usage, which isn't ideal for this kind of product, but it's sufficient for kind of moving it around, and maybe if you want to bring it into a kind of a dev meeting or something like that, if you're kind of pushing some code just for kind of the novelty benefit of it, it would allow for that. And I think realistically, using a status like this on battery is going to be of limited kind of use. It is more there for the kind of the novelty and the interest, and an hour or so of use would probably be alright. I mean, in the end I might find I could, the design calls for larger spacing between these two, and I could easily get 2 batteries in there, which would be even better. Or something like that could fit at the very, very base of the unit, and then somehow maybe some kind of an additional inner plastic layer which then allows the support of this, but until I start playing around with designs I'm not going to know what's going to work. Either way, I think at least that is of a reasonable size. It would be useful having this in, unlike something like this one here, which clearly provides no benefit at all. At least this would work, and it's only just a little bit thicker than the smaller battery. So I think for now, I think that's the plan at least, and I'm going to carry on with the design stage and see if I can kind of come up with something that will accommodate these various components. The top status light, and as I mentioned in the last update, this is a kind of backing PCB. I'd sent that off for manufacture. I did make a slight modification to the PCB, and I also sent it off to a second company, OSH Park I think it was. It's an American firm that will offers a similar service, but the benefit of them is they'll accept the Eagle files directly, so there's no worrying about whether I've got the correct kind of Gerber files all generated, and if I'm missing a layer, or whether the circuit board is going to come back with no holes or no silk screen because I've incorrectly formatted something. You upload your Eagle files to their service, and you can actually see various different renderings of all the different layers, and it looks like a very good service. Turnaround time's not too bad, costs is only marginally more expensive, and the circuit board that comes back is purple, which is quite interesting. So hopefully that will turn up in a couple of weeks, and I'll be able to move ahead with this side of the project as well.